Thanks everybody again for joining. Really excited to be joined by our panelists this evening. Some new friends, some old friends. So we've got Julia, co-founder and CEO of Micrographia Bio, James, who's the founder and CEO of LabGenius, and Laksh, who's the founder and CEO of Charm Therapeutics. And I think we were going to start with a 15-second maximum. We agreed on 15 seconds, right? Introduction to your company. Did you each turn on your lapel mics?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so who wants to go first? 15 seconds. Julia?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Fan-Lee of Micrographia Bio. We're huge believers in imaging as well, and we believe that the next era of drug discovery will really be driven by spatial proteomics. So to that end, we have invented a new type of microscope, and that allows us to see lots of proteins at the same time at the molecular level.
Awesome. That was good. Great. Slightly over 15 seconds, but we're good. All right, James, you're up.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. LabGenius is an ML-driven protein engineering company focused on antibody therapeutics.
Ooh, under 15 seconds. The average is looking good. All right, Laksh?
Laksh, founder and CEO of Charm Therapeutics. We've pioneered a method that takes the protein sequence and the ligand smiles and predicts the 3D protein ligand structure. And that's our company. So I'll stop there.
Well, amazing. Thank you all for joining. You're all part of the community here in the UK, and I think a huge part of it, as all of you are as well. And one of the things I wanted to start with is talking a little bit about the field of Techbio. And I'm curious for each of you, what was the moment where the kind of work we're all doing felt inevitable? It felt like the inevitable future, not just a possible future. And what were the data points that kind of got you excited about that?
I mean, for me, I think certainly AlphaFold and RosettaFold and the protein structure prediction methods were certainly a key inflection. I think before that, there was nothing quite the same that sort of blew my mind in the same way.
Great.
That's what I would say.
James?
I think it's a real...
Before we go, Laksh, when did you start Charm?
I started it in late 21.
Okay. And James? LabGenius?
Yeah, I started, 2012 was when I was working in the field of my PhD. 2018 was when we first took our first seed round from Kindred. You can see some Kindred investors here. So
awesome. Okay, and what was the moment for you where you felt the
I mean, so look, we're operating at a point of confluence, right? We've got all these exponential technologies we're sitting in the middle of. But the real moment for me was when we had folks in the business, scientists trained in the molecule design, who stopped trying to say, I want to design this molecule, and started letting an algorithm to do it. So it's that kind of that real point of mind shift away from the conventional way of doing discovery.
Yeah, that cultural shift is pretty challenging, but it does feel pretty incredible when you get across that line. Julia?
Yeah. For us, we started March 2020, that wonderful month, to start new business.
Great timing.
Yes. Good thing we had our light bulb moment before that month. And the light bulb moment was that for 400 years, microscopy has worked in the same way. Microscopes, since Robert Hooke's time, have been built for the human eye, because that's what we know. Light, optics, look down, the eyepiece. And then we realized what would happen if we took out the eyepiece. We gave all the images directly to machines. What could the machine see way more than the human mind can comprehend in the human eye? And that was a real moment for us.
That's great. So I think one of the things that we all face are challenges bringing together the various fields we work in. Working at the interface is exciting and challenging. Bringing biologists and chemists together, bringing data scientists and software engineers together, data scientists and chemists. I mean, they all speak different languages, or at least they did. What have been the challenges that you feel like have been most difficult to overcome, or maybe you're still overcoming as you build your companies? And where do you see kind of the future of this tech bio space evolving to from a cultural standpoint?
I think when you bring lots of different disciplines together, and some say even workplaces culturally, there's always like a secret handshake or a secret code. But I really feel in tech bio, there's like that secret language, the language of the company. And it may differ between the three of our companies, but bringing classically trained biologists together will have a natural different language than bring a machine learning engineer. And we try to solve that by putting them in the same room. So we have a very in-person culture, wet lab, dry lab, sit together. And we also try to underpin it with a company value of world-class training. So on the day that they arrive, they know that they are expected to share their knowledge openly with each other and also to learn as quickly as possible. And we work on that language every single day.
That's great. James?
I mean, it's so hard, right? I think like the kind of reflection I have here is, it's, you know, for those, I can see loads of people here who I know are founders and like bringing together these incredible teams. And it's not just a challenge of bringing together the biology and the data science and the chemistry. It's also overlaying on top of that the commercials, right? I think there's this whole art of the possible of the stuff that you can do, the ways in which you can apply machine learning to solve some of these problems. But like probably only a tiny subset of those are actually the problems that you really want to go for. And so it's sort of having that that humility to also bring in folks who have seen what works, have seen what doesn't work from that commercial world, and overlay that onto this kind of like young, enthusiastic, can-do attitude that I think creates really potent teams that can go after some of the most meaningful, either therapeutic or just like broad technical problems that we're facing.
Yeah, that's great. Laksh?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably add, you know, on the enthusiasm part, you know, we've tried to hire people who are very enthusiastic about learning more, and then, you know, that they want to be a lifelong learner, right? You know, one of my interview questions often tends to be, you know, like, how do you deal with learning something completely new? Because there's going to be a lot of learning. And what we found is that if the people have a lot of passion for learning a new area, especially biology, you know, then it tends to work out pretty well. So it could still take, you know, 3, 6, whatever number of months to ramp up, but that's just an investment you have to make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great. And James, something you mentioned was kind of layering on the commercial side of things. How is the business model solution space evolving? And have we sort of sorted out what the right model is on the investor side, on the company side? How different is it from the traditional models, at least for each of you?
Yeah, I guess my general reflection here is, funnily enough, when you start to like take an ML-driven approach to something, it can sometimes actually cost more and take longer, at least initially.
In the beginning, yeah.
In the beginning. Yeah. And so the problem space that you have to go for when you're kind of starting out are, what are the problems that you just simply can't solve using any conventional methods? And I think a challenge here is, that's probably your initial problem space. Maybe afterwards you can go for like the faster, cheaper option. But a lot of companies in this room and here in London and broadly the UK are still operating in this world, at least in the pharma world, where like a lot of value is trapped in the asset. And then how do you build a company that can capture that value whilst also continuing to invest it in and build the platform? That's a challenge.
Laksh?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, I think still to this day, you know, the ultimate value is in the ultimate asset. That being said, you know, the way you get there, because that requires a lot of capital, can be, you know, very different for different companies. And, you know, what I would say for these tech bio companies is that they are able to do these types of high-value collaborations and partnerships, you know, a lot easier than some of the traditional drug discovery companies. And so I would say, you know, tech bio companies should really try and leverage that, especially as a way to gain more capital and also, you know, gain essentially optionality to more capital in the future as well.
One of the other things I like about partnerships is that it gives you the opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
You know, you work with teams at large companies, small companies where you partner who are taking a different approach. And I think that's a nice forcing function. It's a nice mirror for you and your team as well. Julia, how about you on the business model side?
I think on the business model side, I don't think the playbook's finished. I think we're probably halfway there, and there's chapters to be written by all of us in this room. I think as you see more tech bio companies mature and get bigger, as a collective, we can do interesting deals with each other. So perhaps looking at the Tempus deal, I think 10 years ago, we wouldn't have predicted that deal to come to place. But now you see it announced at JP Morgan, you're like, oh, that really makes sense. Why wouldn't we collect different multi-omic data or different modalities of data together? And we have each of our USP pockets of data that really ultimately understand the same networks of biology. So I think that those chapters to be written are really exciting, but we all have to explore how to do that.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about talent and education, and let's kind of skate up against some interesting lines here. When I look at the talent that's in London and the surrounding areas, I think it's probably the best in the world. It feels like that to me for the Techbio ecosystem. And at the same time, if I look at there's some incredible companies. You all are building those companies. Many of you are as well. It does feel like there are fewer of these new companies than I would expect for the incredible wealth of talent. Why is that? Is it part of the way the education system is built here? Is it part of the culture? Why haven't we seen an even faster evolution of this ecosystem here in London? James, you look like you're rearing to go on this one.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of reasons. You could actually characterize it as like massive dysfunction in the sense that as a nation we've got an incredible academic base, but where are the companies? Well, where are the companies? You know, I think culturally the hurdle that we're still getting over is this kind of fear of failure. There is, you know, if you try something and you fail, like who knows whether you're going to get a second shot. And this is where it comes down to having like a mature ecosystem with role models, with folks who you can point to and say like, here's somebody who has taken exactly the same path as me. They've done it successfully. I feel like I could be like them. And you know, you remember like we had a conversation after we raised our seed round where I flew out to Utah and I said like, Chris, like what does this next stage involve? Because there was nobody in London who could give me that kind of mentorship. But what I see changing, and the reason I have like a lot of excitement and hope for this community, is that as these companies grow and mature, they create so many more opportunities for new companies to follow in those footsteps.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of early stage seed companies, I would say, and it would be interesting to do an analysis of comparing that with different geos. But I think clearly there's a lot less late stage companies, and I think that points to a lack of, late stage capital, Series B and beyond. And I think also in conjunction with that, to your point as well, there's also probably a lack, because at that stage you start to need serious expertise, right? So I think there's also probably that hole in terms of the management, management teams as well. And I think hopefully that will improve over time as there are more exits in this region. I think that's also another thing. There haven't been that many huge exits, right? There are definitely a few, but it's much less than places like San Francisco.
Julia?
Yeah, I would agree and add, I think for that, we are an emerging tech biosystem. We're an emerging biotech. London is not known for biotech. But after Boston, after San Francisco, like Salt Lake, London, other countries, it is coming. We can see the convergence may have started with tech, then it sort of grew into like research, deep mind types, and now the biology aspects coming in. I agree with the role models. If you can see it, you can be it. And if you can see that exit being recycled, that's going to be really the strength of any community.
So talking a little bit about collaboration and competition in this ecosystem, would you describe this, at least at the early stages, as a collaborative community, a competitive community, a little bit of both? And which direction do you feel like the community ought to evolve in order to maximize the sort of joint success of what we're all trying to build?
I mean, I would say there are definitely elements of both, right, in any ecosystem. I would say it's definitely, based on what I hear from my friends in Boston, it seems like Boston is a lot more competitive. It seems like people are literally moving shop literally next door every couple of years, or maybe even less. I do feel like in a lot of the companies over here, I'm friends, or at least I know the founders or the management team, and I think that's really nice, right? I can send them a text and chill with them every so often, and that I find really collaborative. Yeah.
I feel that like there's this British thing of like, oh yeah, we're not that competitive, but I think yeah, we're friends. I think like British people are like actually quietly exceptionally competitive. But I also think that there's like tremendous opportunity for alignment of interests as well, and so I look around this room and I can see people who, I've had the opportunity to invest in their companies, and like I'm going to make sure that I try and help them, and I can see that some of my investors are here. And I think it's like, this is a people's game. And if you meet people and you like them and you want to support them, like you will be competitive on their behalf.
Yeah. I think back to our emergingness as a city in this ecosystem, I would say the collaboration really helps on, we know we're far from Boston, we know we're far from SF, so if we meet an investor that suits someone we know here in the community, we'll be like, hey, let me connect you with the investor I just met in Boston. There is that element of, we know a lot of each other here, and we try to help each other, knowing how important it is to be connected to the large centers and how we can do our best to operate outside of those centers. I think on the quiet competitiveness side, I'm a Canadian, so I would agree. Collaboration first, competition comes when we're all successful.
I love that. We've got offices in Toronto and Montreal, so.
I made a note of that.
Thank you. So let's transition one more time for the last time and talk a little bit about advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, maybe grad students, postdocs, people who are at a startup or a large company who want to go build something. I think all of us and many of you understand how hard it is, how challenging it is, even when it looks like it's going well, like it's super stressful. What would be the key pieces of advice that you've received that made a huge difference for you in being able to go build, wanting to go build, having the gumption to go build, and what advice would you share with this audience?
I'll go first on this one. I think one thing I wished I had been told, or now that I'm sharing with this group, is when you're starting, you sort of run a million miles and you think about, is the idea good enough? Is my customer's going to like this? Is someone going to buy this eventually? Or is it just, is it technically sound? I think the advice I would say when you're starting to think about, yes, the business, yes, the technology, yes, the people, but also think about building your support network early on. It's a long journey. It's really fun. That's why you want to do it. But having that support network, whether it's in the form of your co-founder, if it's in the form of a scientific advisor, if it's the form of a family friend who happens to be your next door neighbor and works for Merck for 30 years.
Nice.
Anyone you can pull them in early, because they'll be attracted to your spirit and your creativity. And you might, at the beginning, think everything's going to be fine. It's going to all go to plan. But the moment, I think, when you sort of hit a low point and you know you have these people on speed dial, it's great to not have to build that from scratch in the middle of a stressful time. And so finding that early support system, could be an investor even, just making sure that they're there for you. Ambition and kindness can go hand in hand.
I love that. James?
Yeah, I think for me, there are three things. The first is like just go out and find somebody, like the best person in the world who's done it before, as an operator ideally, and just like get them to help you and build that mentorship. And Chris, you've done that for me, and we kind of surround ourselves with these pivotal people that help you along that journey. You want that person to just be like very upfront with you and tell you when something is like a terrible idea, and not try and protect your feelings. I think that's really important. Second piece of advice is like this is at least a decade of your life. So honestly, just like you have to be like happy with that. It's not like Techbio is not like a get rich quick scheme. Yeah.
Investors, earmuffs.
Unless you're participating in our next financing, in which case.
Exactly. There you go. Very smooth, James.
Yeah.
Very smooth.
And maybe like the last piece is like, because it's such a long journey, like if you have a significant other, get them to agree to this as well before you embark on it. Yeah, that's my bits.
Laksh?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say two things. I mean, the first thing, which is something that I was told that I really value, was when sort of running a financing round, especially your first round, whether that's a seed or a pre-seed or whatever, like you have to make it a competitive process. So you need to like make sure that it has momentum, make sure that you can get many people interested. Because if you can't get many people interested, then I think it's unlikely that the financing will happen. That was a really important piece of advice that I was told early on, served me well. The other one, which is more like my piece of advice to you all for what it's worth, is I've found a lot of success in studying other people's success. And there's tons of like books, for example, that you can read, but it's also podcasts and other stuff. But the more data you can collect, right, because we like data, right, the better prepared you will be for knowing how to react in situations that ultimately lead to success as an entrepreneur.
I love that. And I think many of us are technical founders. And one of the things that I found was wildly harder than I expected was hiring and building culture. And I am privileged to get to spend a lot of time with a lot of time with a lot of early founders, and just don't neglect that piece of the business, because science has truth and our job is to find it, and you either will or you won't. But people have many truths, and those truths change over time, and people are squishy. And for scientists, technical founders, I think that can be a real challenge. And so you have to, really push yourself to make those investments early. All right, we're gonna finish with a lightning round. I know it's like kind of warm in here, huh? We're gonna finish with a lightning round, and then we're gonna all hang out together and build connections. So the lightning round, I didn't tell you about this beforehand. That's part of what makes it fun. Okay, so we're gonna do like 30-second, one-sentence answers on what is your boldest prediction for the tech bio world. And if you watched our NVIDIA event, you already know what 2 questions I'm gonna ask. What is your boldest prediction for the next 12 to 24 months in tech bio? Good or bad, just make it bold and like edgy.
I have a 10-year prediction.
Well, that'll come next. But right now we're just doing
24
12 to 24
months.
Yeah, one sentence. Okay, Laksh is ready.
So a tech bio company will be acquired by a big pharma for a multi-billion-dollar amount.
Big pharma.
Yeah.
Not a big tech?
A tech bio company will be acquired by a traditional tech company.
All right. James?
A tech bio company will move to London and acqui-hire all of Isomorphic Lab's best people.
You're already here, though. Okay, and I mean, I'm going to go with what you said, just general acquisition. Or do you have a different one?
Oh no, mine was a tech bio company will be acquired by a traditional tech company.
Ah, okay, great. Okay, and then 10 years out, what does that bold prediction look like?
A tech bio company will acquire a big top 10 pharma company.
Ooh.
London, it will be San Francisco, Boston, and London as the 3 hubs for tech bio.
That doesn't feel that bold.
My prediction in 10 years is we'll all be chilling on a beach because LLMs will be doing our work.
Awesome. That feels like a great way to end it. Thanks to all 3 of you for joining. Thanks to all of you for joining tonight. Thank you, everybody.
It was fun.